Good afternoon. My name is Ajit Sachdeva, and I'm the Director of the Division of Education at the American College of Surgeons in Chicago. I am also Adjunct Professor of Surgery at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. It is my distinct privilege and honor to chair this session, this symposium of the surgery track. And I have also had the privilege of chairing the surgery track for the last few years for the AME conferences. We have a wonderful panel who I will introduce in a few moments individually. And we have an absolute important topic to cover during this afternoon session. We thought as a group, as a steering committee group, that it would be important for us to focus this year on training, advancement, and support for surgeon teachers and surgeon educators. And there is a distinction there, which I will get into in a few minutes. We also felt that it might be a good idea for all of us to present our perspectives from our respective countries and also from the Royal Colleges and the American College, so that we can all learn from each other. And there's a lot of very exciting work that's going on that could be embraced by others across the world. Further, although our focus will be surgical education and surgical educators, the principles, the models, and some of the frameworks we describe are absolutely applicable to all medical and health professions disciplines. It's not just surgery, although we will concentrate on surgery specifically because we are part of the surgery track and we want to be sure we are absolutely focused in this regard. I'm going to begin by mentioning a few words about the framing of the issues. Then I'll get into some of the activities of the American College of Surgeons, and I will, at that point, introduce also the panelists individually and conclude after that my piece of it, and then have each one of the panelists come up to the lectern to present their presentations and their perspectives. We will entertain questions, discussions, any other thoughts you might have at the end after all the presentations are done. And if we have some time at the end, we will also talk to you a little bit about the various sessions of the surgery track and a new online community that we've just launched at this conference. So with that, let me begin. The first thing I want to mention is that I have no conflicts with any commercial entity to disclose. I'm a full-time staff member at the American College of Surgeons. I want to frame the issues by mentioning that despite all our efforts over decades, in fact, I've been involved with surgical education for 3 decades plus, and all of us on this panel have been involved with surgical education for many years in leadership roles. There still is insufficient recognition of the diverse roles of faculty in the education space. Beyond that, the pace of change has been slow. In traditional academic models for promotions, for granting of tenure where tenure exists, and even resources are sometimes tight in the space that we work in as surgeon educators, and especially during the post-pandemic time when we are all struggling to get as many resources as we can, the challenge for educators has been very, very great. And I'm sure that's true all over the world. Further, there is lack of wide adoption of the established conceptual frameworks for educational scholarship, which I will touch upon in a few moments. And in addition to that, all of us in our day jobs, if we are clinicians and actively involved with clinical work, are pulled in many different directions. We're expected to bring in revenues, to bring in research grants, to do education, to advance education, to publish in all the areas that we are focusing on. And as far as we know, there's still only 24 hours in the day. So we need to figure out how we're going to do all this in the most effective way and have the recognition and the advancement that all surgeon educators so aptly deserve. In regard to the diverse educational roles of surgery faculty, we all recognize the role of faculty as teachers. We also know ourselves and recognize our roles as learners. We are all lifelong learners. We are also lifelong learners in the leadership space, and we are leaders as well, and then innovators. And it is these four roles that we need to balance each and every day in our work, in our careers, in our frames of reference back home, and really make an impact to ensure excellence through expertise. This is a model that we described in 1999. This was 3 years before I joined the American College of Surgeons. I chaired a national task force for the Association for Surgical Education. And even at that time, we were discussing the same issues that we are discussing now about recognizing and rewarding surgeon educators. And we described this four-tier model. And we published that in Academic Medicine. Several surgery departments have adopted this across the country. Several medical schools have adopted this even beyond the surgical specialties. At the base is the teacher. All of us need to be effective teachers in different environments, in the operating rooms, in the outpatient clinics, at the bedside, in classrooms, etc. And we need to do a credible and an effective job as teachers. If we are faculty, that is expected of us. The next level up is a master teacher. These are people who excel in being great clinical teachers, and they get awards, teaching awards, for their excellence in teaching and impacting the careers and the learning of learners, whether they're medical students, trainees, either residents or fellows in training, and even practicing surgeons and faculty and surgical teams. These two levels are anchored to the teacher model. Beyond that is a step up. And the step up gets into people whose principal focus, academic focus, is education. So that's why the word changes from teacher to educator. And the educator is someone who's doing curriculum development, exploring new ways of teaching, assessing the impact of education and teaching, and even running educational programs, either for practicing surgeons, for residents, or for medical students. And then right at the top of the pyramid is the master educator. These are the heavyweights, people who have excelled in education and educational scholarship and have garnered national and international acclaim. And that is the peak that we focus on through our academy, which I will point to in a few moments. So that is the peak. And we, in this article, even anchored promotion levels and resources that may be needed to ascend up that ladder. Some people will be great clinicians who will remain at the lower two levels. Others might progress to be educators and master educators. Now, the model of scholarship that we need to look at is the one that has been described by Dr. Boyer when he was president of the Carnegie Foundation. And that was in the publication Scholarship Reconsidered in 1990, that was updated in 2016. And there are really four types of scholarship in education. Scholarship of discovery includes research and real original work with appropriate anchoring onto the foundation of social sciences. Then you have the scholarship of integration, where the new discoveries are integrated with what we do in an effective way and we measure the impact. Scholarship of application, where we apply that to our work and then the scholarship of teaching and mentoring comes in there. Some of the latest trends in the US have built teaching into the first three types of scholarship and don't recognize the scholarship of teaching separately. But we have taken the position at our college and within our academy to look at teaching as a distinct entity, because being an effective master teacher is really a mark of recognition, and that needs to be recognized in various decision-making processes that we all are exposed to. So that brings me to some of our programs that I will go through very quickly. Big program is the Academy of Master Surgeon Educators. We have our Surgeons as Educators course and a couple of other faculty development programs and activities that are built into our programs. Now, our academy was launched in 2018, and it is an iconic program of our division. This is more than an honorific group, although it certainly is a great honor to be selected as a full member of the academy. There's rigorous peer review, there's an application process, and the steering committee looks at all the applications and votes on them, and the decisions are made by consensus. We have then the category of associate member that you see in the third bullet, and those are people aspiring to that level, and these are the people at the educator level of the four levels of the pyramid that I described, who haven't reached national and international acclaim, but have reached local recognition and regional recognition. Our current membership stands at 358, 160 full members, 173 associate members, 14 affiliate members, and those are people who are non-surgeons who support the goals of the academy, and 11 emeritus members. We, this year, got 120 applications. We selected about 80 some out of the 120, and those people would be inducted next month at our annual induction ceremony. As you can see, we have a widespread of surgical specialties from where we've drawn the membership, a huge number of countries from where our members come. And the mission is to play a leadership role in advancing the science and practice of education across all surgical specialties, promoting the highest levels of achievements in the lifetimes of surgeons. We have recurring activities that include our selection and induction of new members in all three categories, and the annual symposia on different topics that we have just before the induction ceremony in Chicago. We have thematic sessions on the first day of our annual clinical congress, which is our annual meeting of the American College of Surgeons. And we have monthly virtual programs, grand rounds and fireside chats with luminaries, and those alternate each month, and they're open to the world. You don't need to be a member. They are totally accessible through our website. Our special activities have included harnessing the opportunities during the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we focused on surgery residency training and focused on the residents and the faculty. We published 7 peer-reviewed articles based on our work during those 2 years. We've been sending newsletters to the entire membership that started during the pandemic, have continued since, and we have placed special emphasis recently on member engagement and international outreach. Our future directions include looking at the acquisition and verification of new skills, especially in robotic surgery, and especially those that include skills verification and credentialing, evaluation and adoption of new technologies in innovative educational programs, mentoring and coaching of our associate members and other surgeon teachers and surgeon educators to help them along in their careers, and we are very committed to pursuing international collaboration. Here's the picture of our first induction ceremony in 2018, and it's a very formal event and has been an annual one since. Our Surgeons as Educators course was launched in 1993. It is the flagship faculty development program that we have. It's a 6-day iconic program of our Division of Education. You can see all the topics that are listed. It is an immersive experience. People come in there for the 6 days and stay there together with the faculty and learn from each other and the faculty. And it is a life-changing experience. We have had a number of people who have reached high levels. In fact, almost every single leader in surgical education in the US is a graduate of that course. I had the real privilege and honor of being one of the 5 faculty members that got the course started in 1993. This was before I joined the college. And we even implemented that at the invitation of the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons, and has been a very successful venture there as well. In the US, we have had 901 participants over the years because we only take about 30 per year. We did not have any course during the 2 years of the pandemic because it requires in-person education and an immersive experience. This year, because of the large demand in the wait list, we have offered 2 courses. And as I mentioned before, almost all leaders in surgical education in the US are graduates of this course. The future directions, we are looking at disseminating these models of the course nationally and internationally, developing online modules to complement the in-person experience, and focusing on greater collaboration across the surgical specialties. The other faculty development programs include, again, iconic Surgeons as Leaders course that I will not touch upon this afternoon. We have a one-day course at our clinical congress. We have other faculty development activities embedded in our specific online programs, and we have an online program in development on assessment. So I would like to conclude with the remarks that state-of-the-art courses and effective mentorship and coaching are essential in training, advancing, and supporting surgeon educators and surgeon teachers. New strategies are needed to recognize surgery faculty for their accomplishments using established models and frameworks. And international collaboration should present many exciting opportunities for the future. We are delighted to have an absolute spectacular panel on stage to my right, and they will speak in this order. We have Professor Julian Smith, who is head of the Department of Surgery at Monash University, head of cardiothoracic surgery at Monash Health in Australia, and has been a real pioneer in the field of surgical education. We have Professor Fiona Mint, another luminary from England. She is part of the Board of Trustees and Senior Vice President of the Royal College of Surgeons of England. She has got great credentials in leadership training as well, and perhaps she'll touch upon that. We have to her right, Professor Camilla Carroll, who is a council member of the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, consultant otolaryngologist, and again, a luminary in surgical education, well known all over Europe, all over the world, much like the others are. And finally, we have Professor Alexander Phillips, who is the director of the Faculty of Surgical Trainers of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh, consultant in upper GI surgery, and again, another renowned luminary in the field of surgical education. So we're very fortunate to have this absolute phenomenal, preeminent panel of experts. At the back is Dr. Marissa Lourdes, who is serving as the tech moderator. She'll be sending questions to us at the end. And I would like to end with this quotation that we as teachers affect eternity, and we never can tell where our influence stops. And we just have to continue this way to make a difference in the lives of our trainees, our colleagues, and our surgical teams, and through their efforts, provide the best surgical care now and well into the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation, Sash. It's my privilege to present the perspective from Australia and New Zealand, and I have no disclosures. I was taken by a recent article in the Journal of the American College of Surgeons concerning the changing paradigm of surgical education. And I think we as educators must be closely aware of these changes. And certainly in Australia and New Zealand, we are very much in agreement with these key statements that Timothy Eberlein made, particularly our role in teaching medical students, the changing nature of surgery from open to less invasive procedures, the issues of the working hours and the mental health of our trainees and junior doctors, the emergence of mentoring programs, virtual reality and simulation. One area in Australia is flexible work practices, part-time training, but over and all, most importantly, is the lifelong learning and CPD of all those in the surgical community. The other thing we pay close attention to are the competencies as outlined by the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons. And in particular today we would be concentrating on the scholar and teacher, but I'd also like to talk a little bit about professionalism as another very important component of surgical education in Australia and New Zealand. Professional development is what we're all about, and I'm going to address three areas briefly. First, our foundation skills course, then operating with respect, and then the graduate programs in surgical education for those interested in education and being a master educator. The college does its very best to support supervisors and trainers. And you may like to review our website where there are numerous sections on professional development, extra materials for supervisors and leaders within the education domain. I'll briefly mention our own academy, as well as some new podcasts and resources to assist supervisors, because they are such a treasured resource in surgical education. Our academy actually predates that of the American College, but functions in a very similar way. Membership's open to anyone interested in or participating in surgical education. There are numerous courses and events run on an annual basis. There are webinars, studio sessions, podcasts, but in particular awards. The reward and recognition of our educators is absolutely critical. The Academy offers research scholarship, and we have an active online community. And this is another very important component of surgical education in Australia and New Zealand. An example of the podcasts are a few topics listed here, but in particular, we're often interested in the cup of coffee or coffee break conversation between supervisors and trainees. So the foundation skills, as it is now known, arose out of the American College Surgeons and Educators, where Sash and four other luminaries came to Australia in 1998 and delivered a 5-day course. I was privileged to be a member on that course. And from that, our surgical teachers course evolved. It wasn't quite as long as the American course, and then over time has evolved into the foundations skills course for surgical educators. And it has online and face-to-face components. And as subsets of that core delivery, we have courses directed at induction for surgical supervisors and trainers, courses to address the issues of underperformance and problems with trainees, and also the interaction between trainees and supervisors. And so that is offered on a regular basis and is the core educational offering. The next important component of our activity is operating with respect. In the mid-teens, there was a lot of attention given to the issues of discrimination, bullying and sexual harassment in surgery. And our college copped enormous attention, most of it adverse, concerning this matter. An expert advisory group was mobilised, and they made numerous recommendations. And I've just listed the recommendations pertaining to surgical education. And these formed the basis of operating with respect, where the college mobilised online and face-to-face courses for all surgeons involved in education. And this arose out of an action plan that was published in 2015. In 2022, we had a look at the progress, how we were going. We were making progress, but there's still a lot to be done. And there's a need to refresh and sustain the commitment towards professionalism, civility, and a culture of respect and collaboration in surgical education. And there were issues of leadership, capacity building, feedback to trainees, the increasing in diversity in the surgical community, and our college was about to be accredited by our Australian Medical Council, and they had a really strong focus on this aspect of education. We think we've made progress, but there's still a lot of work to do. And it is an ongoing issue internationally. There was a recent publication from the General Medical Council concerning training in the UK, and there are ongoing issues, particularly related to discriminatory behaviours within the community. And in Scotland, the Edinburgh College has been approaching this issue in a very similar way to us, and we are planning to collaborate on the issue of sexual misconduct in surgery and surgical training with the Edinburgh College. And so you can see we have the Operating with Respect courses. We also address microaggression, conflict and communication as components of this aspect. And finally, I'd like to mention our graduate programs in surgical education. These arose out of the efforts of Professors John Collins, Chris Christofi and Deborah Nestel, who's in the audience today, and also Stephen Tobin, who's a former Dean of our college's education. And what was established was a master's course with 12 subjects, which are taken over a half-year semester each. The subjects could be taken at any pace. You could do more than one subject at a time. They were delivered both online and face-to-face. And the student accumulated points, and they, after 4 subjects or 50 points, could get a graduate certificate, then a graduate diploma, and finally a master's. And this was modelled on the Masters of Surgical Education at Imperial College. And recently we published a 10-year update which really reviewed the first decade of the master's course. And we had over 120 graduates. It's fair to say that a goodly majority went the whole distance and completed the masters, and the enrolments still remain robust, as we feel this is a really important niche course for those striving to be master educators. The graduates have had an important role in our college with respect to policies and curricula. They've contributed very actively to the surgical education component of our annual meeting and also internationally. The master's students have published out of their theses, and there have been over 30 of those. A number have gone on to senior academic roles, and a number have gone on to complete PhDs. And Deborah Nestel's textbook, Advancing Surgical Education, has a number of chapters based on the master's course. So we feel it does add value. There were a couple of articles in Clinical Teacher early in the year looking at the value of master's degree programs. They are somewhat expensive in Australia. For the full course would be around 40,000 Australian dollars. They are time consuming, but they are designed to complement clinical and educational activities of those with a passion for surgical education. And I was privileged to be one of the first graduates. This was a sort of a chilly evening at the University of Melbourne. Steve Tobin was another one of the first graduates, and we're very grateful to Deborah for auspicing this wonderful course. So I'll finish there just with a final comment that surgical education is very much a continuum and full of transitions. And I think our attitude at the College of Surgeons has to be very cognizant of that, to try and move with the times, but to provide opportunities for medical students, junior doctors, trainees, and practicing surgeons over a lifetime, and to foster the concept of lifelong learning. So thank you very much for the privilege of presenting. Please have a look at our website if you'd like further information.
Thank you very much for that. So my name's Fiona Mint, and as Professor Sachdeva said, I'm come from England. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the English perspective. First of all, by way of declaration of potential interests, this is who I am. I'm a practicing vascular surgeon. I'm Professor of Clinical Education, Surgical Education, dare I say, at UCL, University College London. I'm the co-director of the Harvard Surgical Leadership Programme, which I'm going to speak very briefly about in a moment. I'm the Commissioner for the ACCM, and I'm the immediate past Senior Vice President of the Royal College of Surgeons of England, having actually just dimitted last month. I do want to give a shout out to my base institution, though. UCL is a general university, if you like, but as a surgeon, I feel very well looked after by UCL. Sorry, I'm very short, so it doesn't, thank you. And I feel that we have a very good programme to support educators at UCL, be it surgeons or non-surgeons. But the Harvard Surgical Leadership Programme, this is a programme that I set up with Harvard about 6 years ago now. And we set this up because we felt, certainly at that time, there was no leadership programme for senior surgeons in the world that was more than a couple of days' worth of learning. And we set this up as a 1-year course of leadership. So we feel that we are educating the educators. And it's a 1-year course which involves lectures, workshops, webinars, coursework, a capstone project, and the 3 4-day workshops are spread out between London and Boston, with the final one being in Boston. And although this is a total leadership programme, and it teaches a lot of the things that I certainly learned probably over 20 years rather than over 1 year, there's a huge education component to it as well. And we feel very strongly that there should be, and there are a lot of educators that come on the course. But I'm here mainly to represent the Royal College of Surgeons of England. As I say, I was, up until last month, Senior Vice President of the college, and during my time there, I chaired the Learning and Assessment Committee and the Examinations Committee, so I've had quite a lot of involvement with education. And the college, a little bit like Amy, has a number of things that it strives for in surgical education. It wanted to drive the good education for our surgeons, make it high quality learning, and to form networks so that people can learn from each other, because peer-to-peer learning is so important. So I'm going to divide this up into a number of different themes, and the first is how we train our surgical educators. And we have a number of courses at the college, as all the Royal Colleges do. I think the two most relevant ones are training the trainers, which is to train the teachers, as Professor Sachdeva says, a good baseline. And then we have excellence in surgical supervision, and this is really for our clinical supervisors and our educational supervisors. It teaches them about what education means. It teaches them about how they can better the way that they look after their trainees. And it's specifically, if you like, blueprinted to the UK surgical curriculum so that they are au fait with all the work-based assessments and the methodology of education and assessment, so that they hit the ground running and we're not reliant on the trainees to tell us how we're supposed to assess them. Because I know that when the curriculum first came in, I can remember it well, a lot of the trainees were driving it because they knew the assessments they were doing, but a lot of the educators didn't really know how to manage the assessments. So that's why we set this programme up. And again, for helping the surgical educators, we have the professional passport. Now, this isn't just for educators, but it has a number of educational components within it. And it's a modular passport, so like you go to different countries and you get it rubber stamped in different places. There are different modules that senior surgeons can sign up to and learn from. And as you can see, there are a number of parts of this passport that are very relevant to educators, particularly the human factors, virtual presentations, and career transitions are all very relevant to our educators. And another part of the training for surgical educators, and this is something that's quite close to my heart, is our Emerging Leaders programme, which we've run for 10 years now. And this is to support women and non-binary surgeons who traditionally, certainly in the past, have probably been a little bit left out of obtaining senior leadership roles, particularly in education and other areas of surgery. And we've run this programme to support these female and non-binary surgeons in their leadership pathway. And hopefully, not only hopefully, we know the number of them have taken up senior leadership roles having done this programme. We started it as a one-year programme. It's now a two-year programme, and in the second year, they have much more peer-to-peer learning from each other as well. And we have toolkits on our website, actually open to all of you as well, toolkits on our website to support our educators with their training, with looking after their trainees. And another one fairly dear to my heart, largely because I led on it, is the Parents in Surgery project. Now, we know that surgeons of all medical specialties probably have the greatest difficulty with balancing being parents and doing their careers, being surgeons. That's partly because of the length of the surgical training programme. We know that certainly female surgeons are probably at their peak fertility at a time when they're bang in the middle of their exams, in the middle of their training, and that doesn't really sort of merge very well. So we know a lot of research has come out of Canada in particular that shows that female surgeons are more likely to have children late, less likely to have children, and more likely to have obstetric complications. So we ran a project called Parents in Surgery. We ran a number of workshops, and we pulled together a lot of information about how we can support surgeons, male and female, fathers and mothers, in their training programs. We found actually there were a lot of fathers who came to us also said that they found it very difficult to balance being a surgeon with being a parent. Many other medical specialties, it's perhaps slightly easier, not always, but slightly easier to clock off at 6 or whatever time of day, but in the middle of an operation you can't. So we put a toolkit on our website of all the things that are really useful for our educators to support these trainees in their parenthood and parenthood endeavours. And here's a few other things that we currently have in progress. Most of them are almost finished and haven't quite hit our website yet. And a number of these are obviously common to some of the other colleges. Well, sexual misconduct has been a big thing in the UK just recently. We ran a huge project on that and laid open a number of problems with the way it's been going in the UK. Neurodiversity, also we have a number of issues with neurodiverse surgeons. They learn differently. As educators, we need to know that they learn differently and that we need to know that the environment is different, and not all of our educators have enough background knowledge of that. So all these things are going to appear on our website in the very near future. And for our faculty, those faculty that teach for us, those faculty that teach on our courses in particular, but also faculty who teach on other courses, we have a virtual learning space. And on that virtual learning space, we have resources for them. We have latest learning updates, latest education updates for them. They have debates. And it's a forum for them to have peer-to-peer communications. And of course, we have our faculty handbooks on there, so that anyone who's faculty on one of our courses can access it anytime, day or night, particularly if they're about to go back in and teach or whatever. And it's always available to them. And another part of the faculty availability that we have on our website is a faculty reflection tool. Now, we all know that with our trainees, for their annual appraisal, we send them off and we ask them to go and reflect on a bit of clinical practice that they've had, or something that's gone right, something that's gone wrong. But how often do we as educators actually stop and do that ourselves in a formal way? We're just too busy doing everything else, aren't we? Particularly because we're all clinicians as well. So it's really busy. So we've set aside a space, if you like, for faculty to go, and there's almost a little space where they can fill things in and think about, reflect on their own educational pathway or their own teaching. And they can use that for their own appraisals. We all have to have appraisals as well. So we've set that up for them. In terms of networking, last year, the College of Surgeons of England, we've for a number of years now held a Future of Surgery conference, but last year we ran a Future of Surgery Education conference. As with all the Royal Colleges, we have an international footprint. We're not just in England, and that applies to all the colleges on this stand today. But we reach 52 different countries, not quite as many as Amy has, but 52 nevertheless. So we had a reasonably wide reach. And these are some of the topics that were discussed at that conference. And for a number of years now, we have run the Expert Advisory Network. And this is a network for educators of like mind who wish to innovate in methods of education, methods of teaching. And on the panel, it's not just surgeons, we have innovators, entrepreneurs as well to support with this. So that if somebody, an educator, has an idea that they want to take forwards in terms of developing a new method of teaching, there's proof of concept funding available. And you can see at the bottom right-hand corner there some of the recent projects that we've funded. And we hope to see that those come to sort of early topic fruition, and maybe they'll go forwards and put them into sort of total practice. We also run a number of podcasts, and again, these are generic, but there are a number that are educationally related. In particular, professional development and training, for instance, is one of them. And so all our fellows and members have access to these, and a number of them have found them quite useful. And almost finally, and I'm just going to be within time, our examiners, we have a huge court of examiners who assess for our examinations. And of course, as examiners, I'm an examiner myself. I mean, those of us that have educational roles, we have a platform. We're sitting on this platform today. People vaguely know who we are. But as an examiner, you're just a number. No one says thank you to number 46. So in order to thank our examiners, we hold an update day every day with educational content. And our president hosts a gala dinner for our examiners to thank them for all the hard work that they've done. When I was chair of the exams committee, we had a link up with the Chartered Institute of Educational Assessors rather than reinvent the wheel. They have a lot of educational content available for people who assess on a regular basis, not necessarily just educate, but assess. And what we did for our examiners was we introduced them to the Institute. We wrote references for them to join the Institute, and we paid their first year's membership fee so that they would have access to all of these facilities. So I'm just within time, I think, Professor Sachdeva, and I understand questions are going to be taken at the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honour to be invited to speak at AME 2024 as part of the surgical track. And I would like to thank Professor Sachdeva and the AME Steering Committee for this opportunity. I have no conflict of interest to declare. During this presentation, I will share with you some of my own personal experience as a surgeon educator, a surgeon trainer, both in Ireland and Great Britain and in Europe. I will outline how the role of the surgeon trainer and educator has evolved and the various supports that are available for career development and advancement. I would like to start by telling you a little bit about myself. In the room today, how many of you are practicing surgeons? How many of you are surgeons in training? So it's a wonderful mix of established and the pipeline, and that's what we're here about today. It is my opinion, and that of the Irish College, that the role of surgical education and training is to provide safe and effective patient care. Currently, I am a professor of otolaryngology at one of our major medical schools, Trinity College Dublin. I'm a surgeon educator and assessor with the Royal Colleges of Great Britain and Ireland, or should I say Ireland and Great Britain. And I also work with the European Board of Otolaryngology. Over the past decade, the role of the surgeon educator and trainer has become professionalized and standardized. And this is an important direction for the surgeon educator. Setting standards for surgical trainers aims to ensure that the highest level of training is universally delivered to all of our surgical trainees. It doesn't matter what deanery you are in, it doesn't matter who your supervisor is, but with standardization, with a curriculum, and delivering training to the highest degree, everyone can become a master surgeon. In 2018, the Irish surgical training body, the Royal College of Surgeons, of which I am a member of the council, introduced a code of practice for surgeons. This outlined the standards and best practice for delivering surgical education and training. I happen to be a member of the expert panel that wrote this document. The GMC in the UK, the regulator, in 2016, officially recognized the role of the clinical educator and established the standards which they expect all educators to adhere to. These were based on the 5 core values of the medical educator as outlined by the UK Association of Medical Educators. The surgical educator and trainer must possess a unique set of skills comprising of an expert surgical knowledge, a surgical skill set, and non-operative technical skills in the domains of communication, leadership, and teamwork, recognizing the need to establish standards specific to surgical education and training led to the establishment of the first UK faculty of surgical trainers by the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh. And currently, I am a fellow of this faculty. As well as setting standards of excellence for surgical trainers, the faculty also seeks to develop a national and international community of surgeon educators and training, something like what we are establishing here today with our colleagues from Australasia, from Europe, and of course, the great American College of Surgeons. The faculty acts as the surgeon's voice, and this will be a significant role as a stakeholder in developing the ongoing conversation about current and future developments in the landscape of how we train and how we are going to deliver surgery over the next decade, including AI, the incorporation of new technologies, and indeed the implementation of robotics into the undergrad and postgraduate surgical curriculum. As an associate, a member, or fellow of this faculty, you are entitled to a wide menu of educational resources, including in-person and online training programs. The Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland have a faculty of surgical trainers which welcomes over 10,000 members and fellows from 87 countries. The faculty seeks to ensure that the delivery of surgical training is both effective and efficient, because we must remember the reason we are here is to deliver a much-needed service to our patients. And as we all know, with the COVID scenario, waiting lists all over the world for routine surgical procedures, it's nearly impossible to imagine how we are going to get through it. So we also must not lose sight of the fact that excellence in surgical training significantly and positively influences the delivery of safe patient care. So if we look at the core values, when we consider mastery learning, we are aware that it takes time to acquire surgical competency and surgical skills. Deliberate practice, which is purposeful and systematic, as outlined by the pioneering work of Anders Ericsson, has been incorporated into the design and planning of the intercollegiate surgical curriculum. The Royal Colleges of Ireland and Great Britain surgical training curriculum is a competency and outcomes-based program whose aim is to successfully train an emergency-safe day one specialist with general professional capabilities. Performance in practice and the pathway from novice to expert has been facilitated by the introduction of simulation skills training in the low-stakes environment into surgical education. At RCSI, we have recently introduced a novel robotic surgical program as part of the Faculty of Surgical Trainers. The model of training is based on the 4 educational stages that are outlined in this slide. In order to advance to higher specialist surgical training in the UK and in Ireland, the regulator, the GMC, and the Irish Medical Council require that the surgical trainee passes a high-stakes summative assessment called the Membership in Surgery, or the MRCS exam. The MRCS is delivered by all 4 colleges in the British Isles and internationally. The postgraduate examiners are surgical trainers who have been upskilled in the area of assessment through engagement and training with the college's court of examiners. The integrity of the exam and the examiners is overseen by surgeon assessors. Surgeon assessors have undertaken advanced training in assessment of surgical procedures and surgical knowledge and surgical communication skills. Currently, I act as an intercollegiate assessor for Great Britain and Ireland. Harmonisation of surgical training, assessment, and advancement to specialist status is still very much a work in progress within the EU. The Confederation of the European Board of ORL-HNS have developed and delivered a specialist exam for the past 16 years. Currently, this exam is trying to create a safety net for surgeons coming from multiple European countries, which may not have as robust a curriculum as we do within Ireland and Great Britain, to be signed off with the regulator in the GMC and in Ireland. Currently, I am an executive board member with the EBORL-HNS and am responsible for the head and neck program. Career progression in academic surgery and education is facilitated, in my mind, by completing a master's or PhD program in surgical education. I had the opportunity to undertake one such program in 2015. Imperial College London deliver a unique taught program focusing on mastery in educational theory with an emphasis on translational theory as it impacts on patient-centered care. And not being in a vacuum, as an alumnus of this esteemed program, you then are part of a global network of like-minded educators, innovators, with access to peer-to-peer engagement and ongoing mentoring. Finally, the role of the surgical trainer is to teach, supervise, transfer skills, and mentor. Trainers are tasked with balancing the delivery of high-quality patient care, while at the same time overseeing the training of tomorrow's surgeons, thus ensuring the integrity of the surgical pipeline. Surgical trainers are significant role models and leaders when it comes to motivating trainees in the pursuit of excellence. Joining a community of surgical trainers offers the opportunity to connect with other like-minded surgeons, grow and develop your personal skills, and hopefully to inspire tomorrow's surgical leaders. Connect, grow, and inspire. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Phillips. I'm an esophagogastric surgeon and professor of esophagogastric surgeon and surgical education at Newcastle University. One of my other roles is as the director of the Faculty of Surgical Trainers from the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. I'm delighted to talk to you today about a topic that's very close to my heart and crucial to the future of the profession, the role of surgeon educators, and the work done specifically by the Faculty of Surgical Trainers to try and support and recognise this vital aspect in our field. So a little bit of background. The Faculty of Surgical Trainers was created in the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh back in 2013. This was a fairly visionary step at the time, and the decision was made because there was a growing recognition that whilst we've always recognised clinical excellence in surgery, we need to place equal emphasis on the ability to teach and to train. Further, medical education and training has long been, certainly in the UK, the poor relation to other fields such as academia. So whilst many surgeons incorporate other components to their job plans that aren't specifically operating, they go into management, they do academic, there is still a kind of lack of recognition for what goes on from training. So what did the FST seek to do? We sought to build on the foundational objectives the FST had developed to create a clear mission and guide to the work. Our mission was threefold. We wanted to support and nurture a diverse and inclusive community of surgical trainers to define, promote and uphold the highest standards of surgical training and to ensure that the recognition of excellence in surgical training occurred. I think it's important to realise that excellent surgical training comes from a wide and diverse community. And so we seek to make sure that we try and incorporate everyone, whatever stage of their career, into the faculty. So this document has already been alluded to by Camilla, and I think the next some of the few upcoming slides will ring a bell. It was created back in 2014, and it's now in its second iteration. The standards that were outlined by that document have been endorsed by the JCST, which is the committee that oversees surgical training in the UK, the GMC, and it's seen as an example of good practice, having been adopted as the gold standard for surgical trainers throughout the UK. While the framework for the standards of surgical training outlined here remains unchanged, the concept of a trainee's portfolio to record training has been actively embraced. And so as part of this, and on the ISCP, which is the current curriculum portfolio that trainees use, there is also a trainer component. The trainer component is not very well used, but it does map to the various components of the surgical trainer's standards and allows you to demonstrate that you're fulfilling things in all of the different components. So our vision statement encapsulated our aspirations. Excellent in surgical training is an achievable aspiration for all, and membership of the Faculty of Surgical Trainers is universally recognised as a professional badge of honour. This vision challenges us to strive for excellence in training across the board, not just in pockets of excellence. It positions the FST membership as a mark of distinction, and I will show you a little bit more as we go on with this talk about the components that are involved in becoming a fellow and a member of the faculty, and should be recognised by peers as someone who is truly excelling in this area. So the strategic pillars and goals, as Camilla had put up in her last slide, I've already told you about the ethos of the faculty, and one of the key components for the organisation, and to a certain extent is slightly a work in progress, is fostering a community for surgical trainers to exchange ideas and discuss best practice. A little bit what Amy is doing on a much grander scale. It's currently maintained with newsletters and our annual conference, which is well attended. And I'd encourage you to try and come to our conference, which last year, and this is the thing I'm dining out off of, 94% of people attended said that the conference was practice changing. It's not often that you come across such stark things, but it shows that an engaged cohort of people were coming to a conference, exchanging ideas and getting a lot out of it. The other components for this development, we wanted to promote and uphold the highest standards of surgical training, and we wanted to help give trainers and support trainers throughout their pathway. And we also wanted to have influence. We wanted a place at the table to help try and ensure that we can influence what's going on with surgical training. So, how do you become a fellow or a member of the Faculty of Surgical Trainers? So I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about this. And the reason is to give you an idea about what's involved and what we're expecting and what we're looking for. The Faculty of Surgical Trainers is not intended to be an elitist organisation for those that are at the very top. It's intended to be an organisation that helps everyone throughout and specifically helps those that are involved in training. So we've divided our kind of evaluation of applications into sort of three main spheres. And the first is teaching and training activity. So these are activities that you would probably expect people to take part in as part of their day-to-day job. An assigned educational supervisor, completing the trainer's course, which is now actually mandatory in most fields for getting your completion of training. Then there are the extra things, member of annual review panels, being a college examiner, which is time-consuming and takes you away from home, running courses, designing courses, and also getting awards for teaching and training. All of this goes towards a portfolio that gradually demonstrates someone who's engaged and involved in training to the really fantastic candidates. The next bit is educational leadership. So have you run a course? Have you supervised a course? Are you developing materials? Are you involved in shaping the trainees as a program director? Or are you part of national or local education training committees? These are all formal parts where you have an influence, and often within the sphere of surgical education, certainly in the UK, are very much unrecognised and certainly not recognised within the spheres of people's job plans. And finally, and certainly not by least, scholarship and research in education. So surgical education research is, when you come to AME, you may not realise it, but it's not a well-funded thing, certainly in the UK, and it's not engaged with as much as it possibly can be. But an increasing number of people are doing PG certs in medical education. Many are following on to masters, and an increasing number of surgeons now have PhDs or MDs in medical education. This shows a real dedication to it to go out and do this. Presenting in conferences in surgical education, publishing on these things, and actually taking the time to supervise trainees that are doing higher degrees. These are all aspects that go to demonstrate a commitment to your training and also that you're going over and above. So what does the FST do from an output point of view? I've already talked to you about our annual conference. The last one, whilst small with only approximately 100 attendees, was overwhelmingly regarded as fantastic. We've produced the standards for surgical trainees, which Camilla's already talked about, and we have webinars that are now coming out quarterly and on a wide variety of different things, from equality and diversity to metacognition. Additionally, we want to try and promote the educational research, which I've said has not been done well, and there is an ASME FST annual grant for educational research to try and kickstart and support those that have got ideas but want to try and get them off the ground. Within the UK, there is an annual award of the Silver Scalpel for the best surgical trainer, which has been run for many years. We have followed this up and supporting it as my predecessor, David O'Regan, set up the Silver Scalpel, and he was my predecessor as the director, and we now run a Silver Suture Award. So the Silver Suture is awarded for the best trainee trainer. So very much specifically trying to encourage this at an early part of the career. Additionally, there's an FST medal for outstanding contribution to surgical training, where we try to select the cream of the crop from the country in order to identify and reward those that are really, really performing at the highest standard. And we have regular output in Surgeons News about what's going on. What's the future? Well, my dream is a digital community where we can contact each other and we can talk about the problems we have in training, where we can ask questions, where we can foster our ideas and develop our ideas for research. A regular podcast series is on the horizon. We already have our webinars which come out regularly, but podcasts are seen as a very easy thing to do on the go. And we're also looking to produce guidance on various different things: returning to work after parental leave, returning to work after research or sick leave. And we want to try and give a bit more information for those that are involved and in surgical training as educational supervisors, and how they can then support their trainees. You're often presented in a role where you have a trainee in difficulty for a variety of different reasons, or you might not know what to do when a trainee comes back having been off doing research or on maternity leave, or they're working less than full time. How do you cope with balancing the needs of those? So these are all our aspirations that are on the horizon soon for how we can help our trainers. So I think there's a wide variety of different aspects that the FST are involved in. I think it's important that we look very holistically at our surgical trainers and the different things that they may have problems with. Surgical training is still not recognised well within the UK. It's not about being a good trainer in the theatre environment where you can take somebody through a case. It's the whole package that goes with it, and it's looking after the trainees that you're responsible for. So I think that's all for me, and the only thing left for me to say is to plug ICASET, which is in 2025 in Edinburgh in June. And I hope that some of you will want to come there as an international conference on surgical education and training. Thank you for
Thank you very much, all of you, for your erudite presentations and for staying on time. What you see up on the screen was the QR code to provide feedback. For the AV folks, could you get the last slide of Professor Phillips up? Oh, it's back there. Okay, great. So please take a picture of this and give us your feedback regarding this session. With that, we have time for questions, and we will entertain any questions from the audience. We have almost 19 minutes for questions. Please come up to one of the mics and introduce yourselves and either direct the question at one of our panelists or the entire panel. And we'll also see what comes in through the online system. Yes, microphone 3, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Pascal Berbera from Munich. I'm actually professor of medical education, but in my former life I was a consultant GI surgeon in Germany as well. So I'm not in clinical practice anymore, not so much involved anymore in surgical education, more in a wider field. But I have heard now a firework of activities from all your professional organization. And then I would think everything is all right. But actually you mentioned in the last sentence, you mentioned it in the first 3 sentences, insufficient recognition about the role, accomplishment, not adoption of the framework, the competing roles, what the surgeons have. From that I haven't heard much. Where is the problem? Is that a problem of the surgical culture? I mean, I have a special view on the German-speaking world, what most probably is a bit different than the English-speaking world. But where do you see, beside all these activities, what has to change that your last sentence is going to change?
Professor Phillips, would you get started, and then I'll add a few words as well.
So I think the one-word answer is time. And I think you're right, perhaps there is a surgical culture that we can balance all of these different things. But what we don't have is the recognition within our jobs to have that time to do things as well as we'd like to. To give you an example, my wife is a psychiatrist. She has half a day of supervision with her supervisee. That's what's recommended. That's what the psychiatry trainees have. Now, you may say that surgery is very different. We spend long times with our trainees. I might be doing a 9-hour operation where I have a trainee with me talking the whole time. But to learn an operation is one thing, or to teach an operation is one thing. But there's more to teaching about surgery, and there's more to teaching about everything, and you need the time to do it. So what we don't have is we don't have time. I mean, we can keep petitioning that this needs to be recognised better, but sadly, it seems to still fall on slightly deaf ears.
Yeah, I agree with Alex, and I would like to add from our perspective, clearly all through our lives, we have learned in the real environment ourselves as trainees, and we've taught people right in the operating rooms and so on, and there hasn't been that focus on the theoretical elements of education, the pedagogy, and all the other stuff that goes into this. And now, of course, the pressures of clinical productivity, especially after the pandemic, are huge, and the multiple responsibilities. And when we are working in operating rooms, operating theaters all the time, and we don't have that protected time to teach and even for administration. So there are huge problems, but it is us who can bring about the change. And what you've heard from all of us this afternoon is there is opportunity for us to look at that opportunity in a different way and also to propagate and lead the change. Yeah, please, Camilla.
Just in answering our colleague from Deutschland, Europe is different in many respects to what is going on in Great Britain and Ireland. However, the key element is patient safety, and the benefit of creating faculties of trainers is to have a large and robust surgeon's voice to emphasize to the regulator that if we do not train our trainees to the highest standard, we will have issues which then will come back to affect how the regulator deals. We will never have enough time to do everything, but with the voice, that's what the Royal Colleges are there for, to support the surgeon who has to train. If we don't train people, the pipeline disappears, and that already is happening. Thank you.
I'd like to add something to what Professor Carroll has mentioned. I think it is absolutely imperative for all of us as leaders in surgical education to show the value proposition of education that goes beyond the return on investment in terms of money coming in and money going out, the ROI factor that we always talk about. The value is long-term, and we need to define that and appropriately propagate that as leaders. Beyond that, there are some very elegant studies that have shown, especially in the space of simulation, that people who go through simulation training up to a certain level of mastery learning, and then they can apply that in the real settings, there is even a return on investment in terms of dollars and cents in our setting. In fact, there was an elegant study done at Northwestern a couple of years ago that showed that if you have trainees go through central line placement training with the teams around them, with the reduction in complications of bloodstream infections and even the immediate complications, the return on investment, the fiscal return on investment was 7-to-1. And that clearly shows that education does work, but not everything can be proven that way. We need to show the value proposition. Would any of the other panelists want to say something? Yeah, please.
Since the pandemic, there have been enormous pressures on clinical service delivery. And in Australia and New Zealand, it has dominated over both teaching and research, and job descriptions just lack the component of teaching and research because of the pressures of clinical care. And the other thing is that the health services in Australia and New Zealand are heavily in debt. And so they just justify the lack of appointments on the basis of affordability. It's tragic, to be perfectly honest. And it's very slow in terms of the recovery back to a better status.
Professor Ment, please.
Thank you. I think it is down to us as the clinicians to lay down the rules. In my institution, years ago, all the money coming in from the medical school used to be swallowed up in clinical services. But when I was the undergraduate lead, myself and the dean for our institution said, okay, this money is coming in for teaching. if it's not put in the job plans, in other words, the job plans of the surgeons who are teaching, we're not going to give the money at all. And what we did was we top sliced it. We took some of the money out and we said, if that money is not in everybody's who teaches job plans, you're not going to get this top slice. And all of a sudden, within 18 months, that funding was in everyone's job plans and was no longer being swallowed up by the trust. Now, the difficulty, of course, is you put this money in people's pay packets, they still have to deliver. And I think that's the thing that we're still struggling a bit with. Delivery was much better after we did that, but because we're busy clinicians, it is still hard to marry those two together.
Thank you. Professor Harden, please.
Thank you, Ronald Harden. One can't help but be hugely impressed with everything one has heard. It's absolutely fantastic. And my question isn't meant at all to be critical, but really just following almost Satch's earlier comment about, at the beginning, about how we have to learn and lessons learned outside. And my just worry a little was, and this is not a critical point, is, I mean, the task you're doing is so tremendous, so huge, that thinking of medical education more holistically, do you feel that surgeons are doing enough to support medical education more generally? I mean, the priority is clearly training surgeons. And you showed huge, visions and things like that. But I just wonder, are we missing, are the rest of us, and my own background as a physician, are the rest of us, and as dean of a medical school, are we missing by not having enough of your input? I saw there was one study we were doing on the rewriting vision of medical schools, and I didn't see a single input from surgeons, what their thoughts were. Well, maybe that just been one example. When it comes to admissions, are the most important decision we take in a medical school is who are we admitting? Are surgeons taking enough from their perspective in that admission process, and so on? One could go on this. So I just wonder, obviously the priority is in training surgeons, and you just showed how seriously and professionally you're tackling that, and one is hugely impressed. But I just, are we missing out thinking holistically of medical education? Are we benefiting, as a dean, was I benefiting enough from the surgeon's input to the all rest of the whole program of medical education, undergraduate, postgraduate, and even at CPD level, training GPs? So it just, maybe it's asking you too much to get involved in other things, but I just wonder, taking the whole issue of medical education, holistic picture, do you feel you can spend some time contributing that as well as this special niche which you're doing so well?
Thank you so much, Professor Harden. Let me get started, and then I'd like all the panelists to jump in and say something to that question. In the US, we have a real problem getting surgeons, busy surgeons, to teach in the preclinical years because they're so tight on time, and certainly serving on admission committees and the like. Some of us did get involved in the admission processes and are still involved. Some of us have chaired curriculum committees of medical schools, but the time pressures are such that we do need to carve out that time, and we need to recognize the involvement of surgeons in those activities and recognize them for those contributions beyond the surgical field itself. So I think there's a lot to be done, but the observation that you made is right on target. Let's go this way. Julian, would you please add something?
I think time is a very significant factor. We do have to operate, and I think as academic leaders within surgery, we need to have a certain gravitas with respect to clinical care, and that certainly takes time. And then we devote our attention to our medical students and junior doctors going forward. But we do have a very important advocacy role for surgical education in our own medical schools and healthcare environments, because that is often forgotten, but also an advocacy role for medical education at large. And we innovate, and we do a lot of the scholarship activities that were mentioned, and we should be proud of what we do. and to tell the good news stories. And sometimes we're too busy to do that even.
Great, thank you. Fiona, would you like to add something?
Thank you. I think time is actually an issue for surgeons. We are terribly busy people, but I think there's also a government issue here. We're told that we don't need more surgeons. What we need is psychiatrists. What we need is general practitioners. And certainly in the UK, if you look, that is what we have shortages of. And so I think the medical schools are probably encouraged to have more people from psychiatric and general practice type backgrounds formulating the curriculum. I can remember when the curriculum in my medical school was rewritten about 12 years ago, medical students actually came to me and said, they're taking surgery out of the curriculum, that they can't be doing that. You know, it's MBBS, it's a Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor, so how can they be doing that? But actually, when you looked at it, surgery was being dumbed down is perhaps not the right word, but sort of filtered out a little bit because of so many other competing specialties that need to be taught, but also because there was an undercurrent, an issue where we needed to create more GPs and more psychiatrists. But it's going to go the other way. We do need more surgeons, and we have to stop this now.
Thank you. Camilla, would you like to add anything?
Thank you for your comments. And the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin, Ireland is in the unique position that we also have an undergraduate medical school. And we certainly have a significant component still and ongoing of delivering surgical education at an undergraduate level. We also have the engagement with our College of Sub-Saharan Africa. And between the two avenues, we promote surgery as a concept for school leavers, for medical students. We work closely with the Association of Women Surgeons, which is an international advocacy group. And I think that, again, it goes back to the surgeon's voice. And there is power in having a medical school attached to a postgraduate surgical delivery program. We aren't as prohibited as to what we can do in Ireland compared to what the regulator requires the UK colleges to do. And I know that the trend is to decide that surgery is a postgraduate specialty. And when that happens, I think we will run into problems trying to recruit people into a profession which is long, arduous, and time-consuming. So I think in Ireland we're still protected. Thank you.
Alex?
So I have another hat. I'm also the surgical lead on the MBBS at Newcastle University. What I could say firstly is that surgeons, and a lot of surgeons, are extremely enthusiastic about being involved in undergraduate teaching, which is very heartening. But they also have a limit to the time that they have. Now, the UK is going to see a doubling of medical students over the next few years, if we're to believe what we're told. And in the northeast of England, we're going to see a doubling of numbers of people because of extra medical schools. Space is going to be tighter, and so it's going to require using every opportunity that we have in order to get training in there. Our curriculum is probably going to need to have some change to it, and enthusiastically it's looked on that maybe putting more surgery in is going to be part of that. I think where you have a dedicated component to your job, certainly at undergraduate level, people work very hard and very enthusiastically, and there are a lot of surgeons involved in those roles in the Northeast. There are many that are happy to do ad hoc teaching sessions or ad hoc lectures, but it becomes very difficult to fit that in if it isn't well planned in advance. So I think that surgeons do. I think they like teaching. I think it makes your everything a bit more interesting when you've done the same operation 100 times, but someone has never seen it before. It kind of rejuvenates some of your enthusiasm because you can show them things and discuss things with them. So I think that I think the enthusiasm is there and the desire is there. I think it's just about how you coordinate all of this. And it probably comes down to time, and in time we are really talking about money.
We have about half a minute left. There's one question online. I will just read that out to the panel, and if someone wants to take a quick crack at that, and that is, do you have standardized metrics for career promotion of surgeon teachers at your institutions? And if so, can you point to some criteria that people can look at? Anyone? Yeah.
So for the FST, we recognise at 3 different levels. So associate, so you're all welcome to join as an associate as the Faculty of Surgical Trainers. You just need to put an application in, show that you're vaguely interested in it. Our membership, and I put the criteria up in the different components from leadership to scholarship and so on. And our membership requires you to be doing what you would expect probably a jobbing consultant to do in part of their job. So there's nothing particularly special, but you need to be being an educational supervisor. You probably need to be doing annual reviews and have a little bit scattered across those 3 domains. The fellowship's very demanding, and really we want you to score very highly in all of those. We're trying to pick out the people that are really excelling and leading in surgical education, and that's why you're getting post-nominals that demonstrate you're a fellow. So we want it to be a badge of recognition that this is someone engaged in training and someone who's hopefully doing it very well.
Great, thank you. And I think we are out of time. So please join me in thanking the panelists for a wonderful set of presentations. Thank you all for being here. And just to remind all of you, this is the beginning of the surgery track. We have a Meet the Experts session at 9 tomorrow morning, followed by a workshop. And then we have in the afternoon the short communications and the e-posters. So we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much and have a lovely evening.